Hi everyone, that's Reefer here. Welcome to the second episode of the second season of Focus Friday. And thanks again for watching. So today I want to give you a small update on the new tank. And also tell you something about settling in a new tank. Last episode I tried to tell you something about setting up a new tank. And of course, after setting it up, it's time to let it settle in for a while. So, of course, there's a difference between setting up an entirely new tank without any livestock, or setting up a tank that has previously already been active. So it's actually more of a migration. And in my case, it's of course the second. As you can see, this is week 3 of the new tank. And I have to say that the new inhabitants are the old inhabitants of the new tank are settling pretty fine. Luckily, so far I haven't lost any fish or serious coral, so that's good. I still have to measure my water parameters, so maybe next time. I'm just very curious to see how it has progressed. And how the move has affected my water values. But of course, the most important thing about keeping your tank healthy is just taking a look at it, seeing how the various corals behave, seeing how the fish are, if they seem ill or their behavior has changed. And luckily, that is not the case. So I'm pretty confident that my tank is doing fine. But of course, measuring is the best thing to determine that. So of course, settling a tank, when you're starting over all new, then settling a tank means adding live rock and letting that settle for a few weeks before adding any other stuff like sand, for example. Sand is something you will add at a later stage when you set up a new tank. And in my case, since it's a migration, I have directly moved the sand. It's of course possible to add sand earlier, also when you add a new tank, but then you will also need some stuff to keep the sand in motion. So other than the regular flow, which you can see right here, there's 2 Maxspect Gyres XF250s on this side, and there's one on this side. So these 3 gyres are currently providing the current in my tank, which should be fairly sufficient. As far as I can see, it's sufficient. So coming back to the subject of sand, it's of course nice to have a nice clean sand bed in your tank, but it can also be one of the biggest frustrations when it doesn't come out the way you want. So that's why I always have 2 tips for you, or 3. One is apply appropriate flow, like I showed you just now. The second one is try to get a goby that gobbles up sand. I have covered this in previous videos, but I'll keep saying it. These gobies are literally the best thing you can do to keep your sand clean. Try to buy one like, for example, this Polaris, or the Valenciana sexcutata is also a good one. They stay fairly low in the tank, and they have an appetite for sand, so they will gobble up sand all day, every day. And they will eventually keep your sand very, very clean. As you can see, this part of the tank has the most clean sand. And that's because the cave of the Polaris is right there. So it's his hiding spot, and it really enjoys cleaning the sand all over the tank. So I'll walk to the other side for a moment. This is, by the way, is the mid view of the tank. But as you can see, overall, the sand is clean as it should be. So these sand sifting gobies really are a good addition to any reef tank of any size. Even if you have a nano tank, and there are small gobies that you can look for. And if you have a somewhat bigger tank, you can even add more. So I'm deciding if I want to add maybe 1 or 2 more. The third thing you can do to keep your sand clean is to add sand sifting starfish. Sand sifting starfish are not very visible during the day, mostly. So I'll just take a quick stroll around the reef to see if we can spot one. They are not that beautiful creatures, unless you look very up close. Then I think they are amazing, since they have all these tiny little feet under their body that moves them around. I'm not seeing one right now, so you'll have to take my word for it. There are 3 sand sifting starfish in this tank, and they are also very slowly moving around under the sand, mostly, and they will also keep your sand in motion and thus clean, because the flow will take any detritus or any dirt into the water column. So these 3 tips I have for you regarding keeping your sand clean when setting up a new tank, or when maintaining your tank, of course, since it's not just a thing for new tanks. Also, something to do is keep your water parameters in check. So even though I still have to measure them myself, it's a very important thing to keep track of them. You will see when something is not right, because your corals will not extend, or your fish will look sad, act weirdly, or have even physical changes. For example, ick or other diseases. That's the signal of taking a look what's happening with your tank, and if everything is alright. Of course, what's also important is buying the right equipment. So last week we covered some of the basic equipment that you need to buy for your reef tank, which is flow, temperature, that's both cooling and heating. Heating is the most common one, but when you're living in an area that's not Siberia or Russia, or where it's always cold, you also will need some cooling. So for example, a chiller is a good option, or you can attach some fans on the top of your tank, which will cool the surface of the water 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. But the best thing is to buy a chiller. Light, of course. Light is the main food source for corals, since they are photosynthetic. Most corals are. And of course, a decent skimmer to make sure that any dirt that comes out of your aquarium, or any detritus, will be filtered with your skimmer. So I've shown you before, it hasn't changed much. Here's the example that I'm using. I have some live rock in here as well, also for extra filtration, so you can never have enough live rock in your tank. You can see right in the back right here, there's somewhat more. Then there's the skimmer, which I still need to upgrade since it's a bit too small for this tank. And of course, a return pump is also critical to have to return the water into your tank. Unless you, of course, have a sumpless tank, which is also possible with an overflow box that's not reaching down, or no overflow box at all. Then you have alternatives. So these are the main features that you need to take care of when you're building up and setting up a reef tank. Of course, your aquascape is also something you want to do in the first period of setting up your tank. When you're setting up a new tank, it's nice to do it from the get-go, so from the start. But I have, since I've migrated, it was a bit hard for me to also spend a lot of time aquascaping. So I've done a little. It's not yet sufficient. As you can see, there's still a lot of space to cover between the aquascape and the top of the tank, so I still need to build vertically, which I will in the coming few weeks. So these are the most common things when setting up your tank. I hope you like this video. I hope you like the view of your new tank, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.